right, family, we are back with the Sunny Side View, and I have two of my favorite people. Y'all know they really my favorite people. Two of my favorite people. Both of them were my colleagues. One of them was my boss. He gonna tell y'all that he wasn't my boss, but he really was my boss. He almost fired me probably like 5 times, but I was able to get the pool together, so he didn't. So I'm so excited to have Mr. J on and Miss A. I promise you that's what we call them every day. So these aren't pseudonyms. This is what they're known for. But Jemarion is amazing. I call him the teen whisperer, and we'll hear him talk a little bit about that. And then we have Miss A, who, I mean, she's worked in every aspect of youth advocacy. So super excited to hear from her and her skills in the corporate aspect and what we can do to support young people. So we're gonna jump right in, y'all. We're gonna jump right in. Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you, and then we'll hit Miss A up as well.
Yeah. So first, thank you for having me today. I think I was more excited about this part of my week more than anything else this week. So thank you for, I guess, giving us this opportunity tonight to join you. Jemarion, I currently serve as the executive director for the Stratford Richardson YMCA, which is just a very fancy way to say I love to connect with people. The YMCA just provides me the platform to serve community the way that I want to serve my community. I've been in youth development for all of my career. Been with the Y in itself for now going on 16 years. I started off as a camp counselor and just kind of worked my way through different positions in the Y, all in youth development. And God told me to come to Stratford Richardson, where it's in the community that I grew up in on the West Boulevard corridor. And I've been serving there for the past 2 years as the exec. So native Charlottean, all of my service has been in youth development and to community development in general. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Mr. J. All right, Miss A, you up?
Yes, thank you, Sunny, once again for having us here. And, you said you guys, we're your favorite people, but, I'm here with my family, so it feels so great to be here. Right now I am at a corporate organization, financial industry, and I am in the HR field, but I do have a little bit of youth programming attached to my role. And, my background in youth programming really started when I became a teacher about 7 years ago. And from that moment, I knew that youth programming would literally always be a part of my life, no matter where I went, no matter my title, my position. I knew that I had a passion for supporting and developing youth in my community. And so from teaching, I went on to the YMCA, where I met, Jemarion here and Sunny. And that experience really opened my eyes and really opened the door to all possibilities as it relates to programming, specifically working with historically underserved populations, and really being able to tap into the real work at that level. And so once again, that really laid my foundation to the passion that I have as it relates to youth programming. And I'm happy to be here to talk about my experience and also learn from you all as well.
I love that. Now, probably one of my favorite things, or probably one of the biggest lessons I feel like you all taught not only me, but anybody that came into contact with you, was about being authentic. And I feel like I've heard Jemarion and you, Miss A, talk to the teens about this all the time, right? And now, sometimes you hear people say, oh yeah, be authentic. But I remember seeing you all use your talent, your resources, your ideas to make sure that people understood that there was Black girl magic and that there was Black boy joy. Like it was absolutely a forefront. How do you feel like that aspect of your programming niche, like how do you feel like that has really exploded into the young people that you guys have served? You go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, that be authentically who you are, like that, like is Jemarion all the way. I remember, I heard it growing up, but I didn't actually see that put into play, and I didn't see people actually leading with that authentic leadership. And it wasn't until I got to the why where it's like, okay, like the word actually matches the action.
Right.
And I think that when kids feel comfortable and they see their leader being authentically and showing up who they are, they feel comfortable and they feel like they can do that as well. And I feel like we have to provide space and opportunity for kids to really excel using their authentic abilities, whether it, be an authentic leadership, whether it be, being vulnerable or transparent, whatever that is, we have to give kids that platform to be who they are. And it may not be what we think they should be. It may not be who we think they should be, but that's not our job. Our job is to support them and to be a sounding board and really advocate for them in however they show up.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
Yeah. I wanted to provide people with a thing that was stolen from me. So being able to be my authentic self was stripped, I guess, at a young age. I was always taught, like, even as a young Black man, when you go into certain spaces, you have to walk like this, you have to talk like this, you have to be this, you have to be that. And that can be so stifling for young people, and they lose who they are. And as a result of them losing who they are, we lose so much of what they bring to tables. When you allow people, especially young people, to be their authentic self, the things that these young people can create simply by being comfortable and being able to imagine is just unmet. Like, this is just unimaginable. It's just crazy. I'm a firm believer that we have to consistently provide spaces for people to just be who they are, be who God called them to be, and let them thrive into who they want to become. For so long, especially people of color, we have robbed them of that. We have told them you have to do things in this way that is so linear that people are scared to draw outside the lines. They're scared to be who they genuinely are. So I challenge that notion every chance that I get. Even in my boardroom right now, I have 22 people on my board, and my board is 80% women of color. And when I tell you that is not the norm for nonprofit boards, especially not a board organization that I work for, like, I choose that. And those women are so authentically themselves. Like, it is, sometimes I'm just in awe in meetings. I'm just sitting back like, oh, okay, that's what we're going today.
That's what we're doing.
That's what y'all doing today. Okay. But I just think that if you do that, you get so much more of a refined product by letting people just be who they are.
No, and I've seen that, like, in real time in the classroom. I'm kind of working backwards from what Ms. A is doing. I went into the classroom, and people will talk and say how safe my classroom is, and how the kids really believe that they are geniuses and that they can do, and that all of these great things. And I was like, man, this is stuff I learned from working with leaders that made me believe that I could be my authentic Black woman self, and I could be great, and that was the expectation. And I think that we don't talk about that enough, about when we're serving kids holistically, understanding that we have to include all of them, not to make them feel like there's some piece of them that's not good. So I was, this week I was talking to one of my students, and I made mention, I was like, forgive me for last week. My anxiety was all over the place. I got some new medicine. I'm good. And he kind of, yanked his head around, and he said, wait, Professor B, you have anxiety issues? And I said, oh yeah, I am. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely, And he was like, I've never heard anybody talk about it that it wasn't like a cuss word. He was like, his voice got real low, and he was like, I struggle with anxiety. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, just let me know, give me a little signal if you need a break. whatever, I got you. It's between me and you. We're moving on. But he saw a piece, something that I chose to share about myself, just in a mode of trying to be authentic. Now you see that this student like brightened up. He was like, oh, like my teacher, somebody who I respect, also understands what I'm doing. And I think that when we talk about living our lives holistically, it also means not creating cuss words out of ADD and ADHD or whatever else there may be, any exceptionality. I think we get into that. And I feel like both of you, I've seen you all do it really well. Miss A, I remember, when we talk about camp, right? We talk about all of the things, what were some of the things that you kind of thought of as you were putting together camp, as you were planning maybe for your classrooms to be able to serve kids that have some exceptional abilities?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to kind of go back to the point before, and I remember specifically when I first joined the Y, Jemarion bringing the team together. And I remember there were talks around like, oh, the teens are doing this, they're doing that. Like, why are they doing this? Why are they dressed like this? Why are they speaking like that? And Jemarion brought the team together and said, if we want to bring kids in our Y, if we want to really serve the community, we have to accept them for who they are and meet them where they are. We cannot have all of these limitations on our students. And I think from that point and from that conversation, I even had to do some rewiring within myself and say, you know what, like, because I did this and I like that, I can't expect that from someone else. And I have to be open and willing to accept them for who they are, because that's when the real work happens, when you allow people to step into the space however they are. And I just specifically remember Jemarion sitting us all down and saying, hey, this is how we're going to create change in this community, is if we allow kids to come in and young people to come in how they want to come in, not what we think they should come in as. And I'll go back to what your point is about camp and things of that nature. I think that's what came to my mind, is really being authentic. Like, how can I create a space where it feels comfortable, where it feels like some kids that we and young people that we work with didn't have that home feeling, right? And so how can we create a space where they walk into the Y and all of their problems, all of their worries, really, they leave those at the door, and they're able to really enjoy their youthfulness. They're able to experience love. They're able to experience peace. And I think once you have those foundational things there, I think everything else falls into play. And I think that you have to make sure that your staff and everyone else around you has the same vision, because if you don't, the environment is just not going to work. And I think once you have those things into play, like I said, everything else falls into place.
I love that. How do we create a space where they leave everything else at the door?
Yeah.
Like, that's a new t-shirt, Jay. Put it on the camp shirts. Like that, it's
inspired by his leadership though. Like, honestly, for me, if I did not have that real conversation with him saying, hey, we can't expect him to do this. Like, if I did not hear that, I don't know if I would have operated that same way as it relates to developing classrooms and a space for transformation. I don't think I would have even thought about it.
I love that. Jay for president. You can run next year. We need a lot of help. So
we do.
No, Jay. So, Miss A kind of went into it, but I do want to ask you, Jay, what are some of your favorite examples of the successful holistic youth programs or any of those initiatives that you personally have been involved with that you saw like change really occur? What are some of your favorites? I think I know what one of them is, but what's a few of them? Give us a few.
Yeah, so A really didn't give herself credit here for a lot of this work. So I'm going to back this up just a little bit. Okay. So I too struggle with anxiety. And I think A was probably one of the first people that I talked about that with. And I grew up in this down south Baptist. You know what I mean? You better go pray about it.
Your mama don't play.
You better go pray about it. But then here comes this little petite lady in here talking about, have you tried essential oils? And and she's like, you need to try a little lavender. And literally, I use lavender to this day.
Yeah.
Literally, I drink tea because of Andrea. Like these are things that she taught or she introduced to me
Very
that
true.
I use to this day.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I will always say, that every teacher, anybody that works with youth, always needs to have a diffuser going in their space. It doesn't have to be overpowering. It doesn't have to be anything. Well, but somebody has allergies. It can be something way off in the corner, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it will definitely help shift the mood in any space.
Oh yeah.
But I guess even more profound to that, I am very, very intentional about creating trauma-informed spaces. So I have this big, audacious goal that my branch will be 100% trauma-informed in the YMCA of Greater Charlotte. And what does that mean? So I've gotten a lot of pushback. What does that mean? Well, one is we changed our language. We no longer use deficit-based language when we're talking to or referring to our youth in our building, right? So no kid is coming to us with meeting us using deficit-based languages towards them. We're not going to raise our voice. We're not going to talk to them about what they did wrong in a punitive manner. We're not going to do that. We're going to meet them where they are, and we're going to get them to where they want to be. That's the first thing. Second thing is, are we providing consistent resources to our families? Not everybody grew up the same way, right? And unfortunately, if I experienced trauma as a child, if I didn't correct that trauma as an adult, if I didn't address that, I am more likely to pass that on down to my child. So we have to make sure that families are very well aware of the resources that are out there. That's the second thing. And then 3, how might I introduce those services inside of a place where families are already coming to? If families have a relationship to the brand and to the people that work for the brand, in this case, namely the YMCA, how might I bring services to meet you where you are, so that I'm not asking you to come pick up your kids after a long day and then go to therapy across town? I'm gonna have a therapist right here in the teen center, and if y'all want to talk to them, they in there, they free, and they here for you any day, anytime you want to talk to them, right? So it's bringing resources to folks in spaces that they're already comfortable with. So those are some things that I do. But I also want to make sure that it's important that we practice what we preach. So yes, we're doing this for our kids and our families, but I want my staff to be in a trauma-informed environment. I want my staff to be able to say, hey, I'm coming to work today, but I'm coming to work with these things in my backpack that I just can't unleash right now. And I might need a little bit of grace as I maneuver throughout my day. So I think my entire branch, I'm working to have the entire branch, our entire ecosystem, fully trauma informed. And it's just those things that make it that way.
No, that's so heavy. I'm so glad you said that. Number one, Andrea is also the reason why I ended up going to the doctor about my anxiety. She said, sis, you need to get this. You might be a doctor. We're going to call you Dr. A, bro.
See, I think it's pros and cons too, because some people think I'm way too nonchalant. So I think there's just pros and cons to the whole thing.
You were on it. And, I think sometimes, with people like Jay and myself, you can be so busy doing stuff and producing that you don't realize that there's some anxiety behind that. So, shout out to you for making me stop and take a moment and say, hold on, let's take care of you so you can continue. So shout out to you for that. But Jay, exactly what you said about, I love what you said about, did you say deficit-based language? That was huge. I don't know, Miss A, we got to get him to bottle this up and sell this. Like, people need to be taking.
I mean, he has a whole book that he needs to write. And,
it's right there. Like,
I'm happy to be on the marketing team.
it's literally right there. But I say that because I didn't realize until I got into the classroom. You hear data, you hear numbers. Working at the Y, we hear underserved, we hear Title I, we hear all of these terms. And you start, you realize like, oh my goodness, I gotta do these things. And we're doing it with a good heart, right? Like we're trying to get these things done. But I realized when I started meeting parents that kids are not failing because their parents aren't doing homework with them because they don't want to. the parents are working 2 and 3 jobs and they're not home to do the homework with them. So now you have Johnny gets off the bus at 5 o'clock and he's hanging out with his friends from 5 to 9, and mom gets home at 10, so it becomes like it's a bigger thing. It's how, my master's thesis that I'm working on is talking about how homework is inequitable, and just thinking about how we have to carve out space even in the daytime, or create a space after school that everybody has the opportunity to get it done, versus expecting it to just be, how most of us were raised and grew up. And so hearing you kind of go into depth about it, Jay, it makes me kind of stop and think through like, hey, am I using this trauma language, this trauma-based language with these families? And then what am I perpetuating when I'm having these conversations? So that was really heavy. I definitely loved it. And when you start to unpack these, not only for the families, but also for your teams, and this will bring me to you, Miss A, when you think about like from the corporate aspect, what are some things that, you all see from the corporate aspect, that when you see things like this, like some of these programs that we're seeing happen successfully, these staff teams that are doing better because they also are partaking, how do we start to reach out to these corporate spaces to say, hey, can you partner with us? Or will you show up and read a book? Or will you, how do we start to do that effectively?
Yeah, and it's great that you mentioned that, because I think that we have some revamping to do on the corporate side, right? Oftentimes we go into communities and say, hey, I think you need this, right? Rarely do we go into the community and say, how can we help you? And I think that's what we have to do as a corporate organization, going into the community and saying, how can we help you, right? There is not this cookie cutter approach to supporting communities. We have to have an individualized plan for how we support communities. And once the community tells us what they need, then we can take it back to the table and say, hey, this is how we can support this community. This is how we can support this grassroots organization, this nonprofit organization that's actually doing the work. How can we provide those resources? And I would say for a nonprofit, if you do know of, some organizations, almost every organization has a corporate philanthropy program, reach out to them. How can I be a part of your grant cycle? How can I do this? Sending them paperwork to say, hey, this is our mission. This is who we support. This is how it aligns to your mission. The worst that you can hear is, no, we're not providing support right now. And I think that if you are a grassroots or nonprofit organization, you should just take that initiative and reach out. And I said, from the corporate side, we have to do a better job of asking the communities how we can support them, versus just offering, hey, we have 1,000 book bags, right? You may not need 1,000 backpacks, right? You may need support for food. So I think that's how we can support each other. It has to be, once again, we're talking about this holistic approach. It has to be something that we can approach as a team together.
I love that. I learned in when I did my IRB, I learned about that, where they say, you don't come in like a savior. You ask the community, what do you need support with? So I love how you're, challenging corporations, but also nobody's ever told me to go ahead and reach out to the corporation.
The worst you can hear is, oh no, we've closed the grant cycle, or maybe we'll look at it next year. But that way, someone already knows about the work that you're doing in the community. They may have another resource that can support you. It does not hurt to ask. Every corporation has a corporate philanthropy department.
Oh, I love that. Listen, you done learned me today. Okay. You done learned me. Okay, so when we talk about that, right? You talk about, hey, everybody's got this space that can help. Are there any examples that you have seen, even if you've not been personally a part of them? And maybe Jay, you might be able to answer this as well. Are there some successful partnerships between youth programs and corporate entities that have made a real positive influence and difference that you have seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just kind of be selfish and shout out my own project. I got to toot my own horn here. But I mean, within our organization, we started a nonprofit, which I manage, and it started about 3 years ago, where we offer scholarships up to $10,000 per student to go to a university that they want to. And we've also realized, hey, everybody is not going to college, right? How can we provide access for students and resources for students who want to go to cosmetology school, maybe want to get an HVAC certification? How can we pay for that? And as we talk about holistic approaches, we're not only giving them the money, we are also providing them with a mentor that can help them, answer any questions. We also realize as well, like, we're providing these students with scholarships, but do they have jobs over the summer? How can we use our resources to provide jobs for them? We also realize that there is a gap with technology and digital literacy. How can we provide a laptop? How can we provide financial literacy courses? And so that's one successful partnership I can definitely say. And I think Jemarion hits it on the nail with corporate partnerships in his board in Stratford Richardson YMCA as it relates to the hundreds of corporate partnerships that they have. It's amazing just to see it.
I love that. So good. Jay, what would you say?
Yeah, and A's company is one of those corporate partners that we love. I think A hit the nail on the head as well. You got to keep folks connected to the cause. And people sometimes think that corporations are far away from the cause, and they're not. There are people like A that give the A-OK behind the scenes that are truly connected to what's going on in community. But you have to invite those folks to be a part of the work as well. So our relationship with A's company is a great example of that. We have an annual fundraiser each year that provides kids opportunities to come to camp, funds our college tours for our teens, but they have to know what we're doing, right? We have to invite them into our doors to understand our cause, or else they're just not going to know. But that is a great example of how the corporate sector is definitely helping the private sector as well in the community.
And the truth is that we have to work together. I think one of the kind of aha moments for me when I started teaching was I was serving in a space where, I was doing Bible studies with kids, and it was amazing. And then I realized that the kids cannot read. And so where do I go? What do I put my money behind? What do I put my talent behind to ensure that I can love on them? God, God loves them. But also I need you to read and do math, And so how do we make a real difference in the community? Even like for me, as a believer, as a Christian, it's like, how do I put my faith into action? How do I go in and make sure, hey, I want to make sure that if you're on a kindergarten level and you're in the 5th grade, that we get you moved up at least to the 3rd grade by the end of the year. Like, that's impact. And that's going to be the type of impact, it really reminds me of, Jay, what you do with the teens. And I'd love for you to kind of chime in with it. I know Ms. A worked in that with you as well. And it's kind of what I alluded to when I was talking about one of your favorite entities or one of your favorite groups. But it speaks for itself. Like, your young people, not only probably the biggest thing that speaks from my aspect is not so much as A said, it's not every kid going out to college. It's every kid having some type of post-secondary plan. I'll never forget that. That's always what it is. But also seeing every single one of those kids just not want to let y'all go. Like, keep coming back, keep showing up, keep coming and saying, hey, Mr. J, what you doing? What you doing? Stopping in. And you be like, get out of my office. They just want to come and hang out. So seeing the beauty of that, I mean, I'm seeing some of those kids, I'm like, oh, dang, they like 22 now. Like, where you been? So, speak a little bit about, that program and some of the things that, what made you create that program? Because that's still your baby. You won't let nobody else take it. So that's still your baby. Even though you're an exec now, you like, not too much on this one. This is mine.
Yeah. So, Leaders Team is the name of the program, and it started with we were at the Johnston YMCA back in the day, and I would spend time in the gym each day, like greeting teens and making sure that they were comfortable, give them a little snack or two. But I constantly like asked them, what's next? Like, because most of these kids were juniors and seniors. I'm like, what's next? Like, what does next year look like? And I consistently heard, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And they were comfortable saying it. Like, they were comfortable not having a plan next year. And what that signified to me was that somebody along the way has either told this team that as long as you get to high school, you good, right? And times just had changed at that moment. Like our babies had to have some type of plan. So I guess a few years, before that, we get to a space where we developed this high school college tour. And our first trip was to Atlanta. Went to Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark. And I remember taking a busload of kids down, maybe 15 or so kids. And this was the first time that a group of them had ever stepped onto a college campus. And they were completely blown away by what they had seen, the level of engagement with other student leaders. I think we had they were strolling on the campus at Clark, and they were just like, Mr. J, what is that? Like, just really blown away by what they had seen. But we always do these deep talks on night 2 of the tour, and this one was no different. So this is the first trip, so we were only focusing on college readiness. But then we get to this hotel and have this conversation, and we find out that none of these kids know who they are. They don't know their contributions to this world. They don't know the magnitude of their smile. They don't know anything about who they are and how to advocate for themselves. So we then added the second pillar, which is self-identification and advocacy. So then we moved back to Charlotte, and these kids are like, Mr. J, we're ready to give back. We're ready to do more. So then these kids are talking about community service. So then we added the social responsibility piece. So it's a leadership development program that focuses primarily on 3 pillars, which are college and career readiness, self-identification and advocacy, and social responsibility. All of our programs are curtailed to one of those 3 pillars. The entire goal behind the program is to make sure that children and teens, specifically youth of color, have post-secondary plans. Time and time again, youth, especially youth of color, don't have post-secondary plans. Right. And it's because nobody's sitting down with them, telling them their options. College is not always the only option, right? And it's not the only option. There's so many more resources that are out there these days that youth just have to have exposure to. And my job is to make sure that they have exposure to all the things that are available to them and make sure that they expound on those things, especially after high school. That's the sole purpose of this program. This program is not to be anything shiny or anything like that. This program is to make sure that youth, especially youth of color, have a post-secondary plan and that they're enacting on that plan.
You said, it doesn't have to be shiny or anything, but I literally have seen kids who were so shy they wouldn't even speak, in the younger ages of camp, and to see them become a part of the leaders team and to just blossom, and to just become so self-aware, to become engaged, to become civically engaged. I mean, they was telling people to vote. Like, I was like, this kid wouldn't even speak 3 years ago. So to just watch the young people become the shininess, it definitely is. And that's a legacy that's going to outlive us. That's something that is making a true change. And Miss A, I know you kind of have been part of it now from both sides. From, you were right there in the trenches working in it and leading it as well. And, now you're on the philanthropic side. How does it look from your vantage point?
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to Jemarion's point. as we're talking about like holistic programs, like the first thing that comes to mind is Leaders Team. And
every time.
the reason why is because I remember when I first joined one meeting, I think a student, we were talking about a transcript or something, I can't remember. And the GPA was really low. Jemarion gave his story about it. But the one thing that Jemarion didn't do was like, well, why isn't this, like, why is your grades here? Why do you have an F here? He said, what's the root cause of this? And I think we found out there were some things going on with some family at home. This person was like the sole caregiver, whatever that may be. And I think about a holistic approach is really making sure that kids have the basic needs, right? Like, are they safe? Do they have food? Do they have this? And I think once you realize that, then you can start to build off on everything else. Yes, this is why his or her grades look like this. This is why they're not going to class. And I think that's the great part about Jemarion's program, is that the students felt so comfortable coming to him, talking about things that they would never speak to anybody about. And we were able to get to the root causes and get them on a path to success and get them to, to meet their aspirations and goals. So I definitely want to go back to that. And it's just amazing. I don't think I've ever been a part of any other program that one speaks to authenticity and allowing kids to come up and show, who they are. And then when you meet them, I mean, you're just blown away by just their presence and just ability to coach, which I think we talk about that all the time. Like, they're able to just flip it on. Like, there's a professional side and then there's like the play side, right? And you're able to see that and you're like, whoa, I wish I would have known that if I was a teen. And it's because of, them having that safe environment where their authentic selves are nurtured. So I think I kind of got off topic there.
That's perfect.
Repeat the question, because I totally forgot it. I had to say that before I answered the question.
No, that was perfect. I also will say I've literally focused my classroom around things that I saw in leaders. So again, it's impacting beyond where Jemarion may personally be, where you, Miss A, may personally be. It's transcending everywhere. So no, it was definitely a point to go back to. So I appreciate it.
An honorary shout out to the other advisors. I mean, you have you have Fluffy, Satasha, Rob, I think Jen, like Jessica, like all these people really were the building blocks to this program. So definitely shout out to all of them who still, impact youth in their communities as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let me ask you, and either one of you can answer this. We're winding down. So what future trends or innovations do you see in the field of youth programming, and how can they be harnessed to benefit young people holistically? When we think about the demographics that we're called to serve, what are some future trends and innovations that you guys are seeing on the horizon that you're like, you know what, we need to jump on this, or I see this coming around the corner? Is there anything that kind of jumps out to you?
If there's any program that is still 100% adult-led and adults, the ideation is coming only from adults, then your program is going to be non-existent in a few years. Why? Because these kids have ideas that are just, I was not thinking this way when I was their age. I just wasn't.
Yeah.
They just have so many more ways to get after the problem that I just never thought about. So I'll give an example. Last year, our teams competed in a national competition with Amazon to develop a program or service that would meet their community needs. So our kids got the brainstorming, and their topic was, addressing mental health in underserved communities or underrepresented communities. And whereas Mr. J was like, oh, okay, we can have like a little health fair, have some vendors come out. It's going to be real nice. They was like, yeah, we ain't feeling that. Like, we ain't coming out to no health fair, Mr. J. Like, that's why. I was like, okay, what would y'all do? So these kids designed Brunch and Blossom. And around Brunch and Blossom, it was a mental health awareness brunch, but it had a team panel with mental health experts and professionals on there. They had resources for the teams. They did a paint workshop throughout the day. They meditated a little bit. Like, it was like this phenomenal thing where we had about 85 teams show up to this event.
Wow.
Just out of the blue, right? Like, and this is something that they completely put together, designed from top to bottom. But literally, we had to rely on them and their thoughts to help push this through. It was them that got that table full with all those teams, right? It wasn't Mr. J. It was them and what they decided that they wanted to do. So I say to any adult, if you are still the person that is designing your program from beginning to end, then you're wrong, and you won't be here for long. And I mean that with the most sincerity. You have to make sure that you are incorporating teen and youth voice. Like, that is so important. The times have just changed.
That's so good. I'm just need to, Miss A, we need to help the man write a book.
I love it. You know, I'm in here soaking it up, just sitting and forgot I'm supposed to answer the question. I'm just like, oh, you know, it's great. And I would say, in addition to Jemarion, you know, the youth now, they have so many resources, right? And so they're able to see different things and be very innovative. And I think that if we're talking about innovation, we also have to mention technology, right? And so I think that we are going to see technology play a very big role in youth programming. We already see AI tools kind of taking over a lot. How can we not be afraid of technology, but embrace it? How can we embrace virtual therapists? How can we embrace virtual, social workers? How can we embrace tutors that may be on the screen and mentors to support programming? So I think that in addition to not having adults drive the wheel and drive the boat, we need to also embrace technology as well and figure out how we can incorporate those into the programming.
I love that. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I think or somebody hit on it earlier, is that partnerships are also pivotal to what we do. Yeah. Right? No one organization can do it alone. Like, partnerships are so valuable to the work that we're able to do. You will move the needle so much further if you are a collaborator. There are so many folks that have different levels of resources and different levels of expertise that just want to get to the table. They have no other motive but to serve community, just like you want to serve community, but they just bring a different perspective and a different level of resource to the table. Those people should be welcomed. A lot of times, especially in the African American community, we want to work in silo. We're afraid that somebody else is going to get the credit for what we're doing. We're afraid that, somebody else is going to, steal our cheese, is what Dina used to say. Yeah. Well, in actuality, we got to be collaborators in this. Yeah. I work in a corridor that is a historic corridor. We all worked on Beatties Ford Road together, which is another historic corridor. 5 or 6 major institutions on that corridor. You have JCSU, West Charlotte, the Friendship Church, Rita Memorial, the Park Church. 5 major historic institutions, all doing similar work, never talking to one another.
Never.
Imagine if all of those individuals got to the table and they all designed a strategic plan for that corridor that focused on youth. Imagine the amount of youth that would matriculate from Statesboro Road Elementary School to Johnson C. Smith University. Imagine that continuum. Yet nobody has ever thought to sit down and collaborate with one another. And therefore, we're going to continue to see the results that we've seen. They're going to be small until we start to think big.
Yeah, my pastor says it's not what you can do, it's how many people you can get to do it. And so he always says to us, I'm not asking what you could do. I'm saying, how can we engage more volunteers? How can we engage more of the village to make sure that the work gets done, whether you're there or not? And it's one of my favorite things that he pushes so hard about engaging everybody. And you just hit it, just right there. As I think about all the things that you all have kind of talked about tonight, I have 2 last questions. And one of them, I just want to hear from your opinion. What are some key challenges that you see that young people are facing today? And the reason I'm asking is because, as I think Jay alluded to it, it's different than what kids were facing 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So what are, you're with your needle right on the pulse, particularly teens, let's kind of narrow it down. What are some things, some challenges that you all are seeing that they are facing right now that the community should start to have conversation around addressing?
Yeah, I'm not as close to the work anymore, so I would love to hear Jemarion's, perspective on, what challenges, that you're seeing, within the community as it relates to youth and the teens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess the immediate things that come to mind, and I'm no expert, right? But I see it on a daily basis.
Actually, you are. You actually you are.
We learn daily. We continue to thrive. But teens are the forgotten population, and they are in this space where people strongly believe that teens must have it figured out. Like I cannot tell you the amount of conversations that I have with people that says they ought to know better than that. Or they should know better than that, right? There are constant conversations with people that teens already have to have it figured out. And the harsh reality is, for anybody that's going to listen to this, is they don't. They don't. Sometimes we might luck up and they might have an inkling of what we think we're supposed to be doing, right? But there is something that's saying, hey, you can still go the other way, right? Or you can still do this, or you can still do that. But they are still learning. They're still developing. And I think that is so important for people to keep in mind, that those brains, like scientifically, are still developing.
Yeah.
Even somebody that's 21 years old, like that brain is still developing. And I think that sometimes we've forgotten about that. So one thing that I think they face today is that there are a lot of pressures on them to have life figured out. So we do a social emotional learning or a social emotional tactic or question of the day. And last week's question of the day was, what are you most fearful of? And I kid you not, the number one response on their sticky notes was failure. Literally over and over and over and over again. And I have 46 kids in my program, and I'd probably say 30 of them had failure on there. There is this thing that they have to have it figured out, and have to have it figured out now. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that the pressures outside of this pandemic have just been out of this world for these kids, right? Like you've taken kids from being in this world and living freely and doing their things the way that they've traditionally done them. You've locked them in the house for a few years. You've opened the doors and said, "Oh, go back to business as normal." Yeah. Well, what did they do that? Yeah. What did they do that without some type of repercussions? And right now, unfortunately, we're having to deal with a lot of those unmet needs that we saw during the pandemic. They're just coming to surface today.
That's so good. That's so good. No, that was powerful. And it makes us just think about, having more grace with our young people and saying, you know what, you don't have it. I'm still trying to figure it out at 40. So I know, how do I expect you without the life experience that I have from at least the last 20 years to have it together? So yeah, that was really spot on. Okay, last question. As we wind down, is there any advice that either one of you have for corporate, have for parents, have for young people, to get to a place where they can take those steps to where they are well? And well is, as like you said, we're talking social emotional, we're talking, well doesn't mean that you're going to college. How do I get to you yourself being well? Is there any advice that you can have to kind of take those first steps to start to get there? Doctor.
Yeah. I would say really my message is for really parents and educators is really, how can you create an environment that's nurturing, both emotionally, and, physically, intellectually, all of that holistic approach. You have to create a nurturing environment, and we have to have, a non-judgmental tone and have non-judgmental conversations with youth, right? When they feel that they can come and speak to you about whatever without you judging them, it's going to be a great space for them. And it may not be what you want it to be, but we're creating that safe environment where they feel like they can be, like we said before, authentically who they are. I think it's also important that we find balance in life. I think life is all about balance. How can we support our students academically, making sure they're healthy academically, and also making sure that they're mentally healthy? Once we find that balance, I think that we'll be on a better path to helping our students just reach their full potential. And most of our students and all of our students have it, right? It's us as adults that have to do that rewiring as it relates to how we see it, what conversations that we're having with our students to make sure that they are successful.
Yeah. So good. Dr. A.
Yeah.
Dr. A in the building.
That's right. We're gonna go ahead and claim that right now. I would say for me, it's making sure for the adults that are out there is that we are remembering to lead with love. I remember riding the car with my mom, and I'm like, look at him right there. Like, I wonder where he about to go, talking about a team. And she was like, I don't know, you better not say nothing to him. You better keep going. Like, she was so scared to say something to him. I'm like, Mom, like, it's okay to lead with love. And it's okay to tell a young person that, hey, I got your back. And I don't know you like that, but if you ever need anything, I got your back. So one, it's just to lead with love. And for the young people out there, it's just never forget to be authentically yourself. Bring your full self to any table that you want to be at. And if you can't be at that table, pull out your tools and build your own table. Because you are definitely worthy of being where you want to be when you want to be there. So be authentically yourself, and know that people like Sunny, like myself, that genuinely believe in you, and we genuinely have your back every step of the way.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I would say you have to advocate for yourself, right? Like, we have to teach our students to advocate for themselves, because no one is going to advocate for you more than you, right? No one's going to come up to you and say, hey, how can I help you today, right? You got to tell them, this is what I need and this is how you can support me. Like, we have to tell our students to advocate for themselves.
That's so good. I mean, Dr. A, we got the author, Jemarion, like...
Dr. Sunny, you're the one on the path writing the whole dissertation.
Listen, I'm on the way. But listen, Jay needs to finish a book before I get this PhD. That's what I feel like needs to be.
A whole tour, a whole conference.
Do this whole conference. Yeah, and then I think I'll just finish with, for those parents who feel like you may not be doing things the right way. Kids are going to remember the hugs you gave and the times that you showed up more than the stuff that you bought them. So they're going to remember if you were there to listen, if you were there to look at their drawings. They're going to look back and think about those things instead of what their new shoes may be. And so I think sometimes our parents put themselves, due to pressure, they kind of, we start to buy these materialistic things or get together, and these kids want a hug. They want a hug. They want somebody to say, I am sitting and I'm listening to you. So just like what Ms. A just mentioned, it's hard to advocate for yourself when you feel like nobody's ever gonna hold you up. And one thing I loved about my mom was, if I was wrong, she was gonna ride with me. Like, in front of people, she was gonna ride with me and pull me to the side after and be like, okay, now wait. Now wait a minute. So yeah, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me tonight. I'm so excited for all the things that you all are doing. Is there anything that you have coming up that you want people to kind of jump in with. If not, that's okay. You can just let us know if you want people to follow you anywhere, or if you just want to say goodbye, that's fine too. So let me know. Miss A, any last words, anything that you want to add?
No, I would just say, like you said, give people grace, lead with love, as Jemarion said. I'm not that active on social media unless I'm on vacation. So
that is so true, y'all. So true.
Have anything to offer there. I don't have anything to offer there, but I think if you are looking to get involved and looking to give back, I think that you should check in with your, local nonprofits and grassroots organizations. And once again, just ask them how you can be of service, and go from there.
I love that. Thank you. Mr. J.
Yeah, likewise. I'm not as active on social unless I'm taking a good selfie, as they clowned me for earlier, and doing my own little thing. But yeah, I would say, if anybody ever wanted to connect, please reach out to Professor Sunny and definitely get connected with me. More than happy to continue the conversations. They're vitally important.
Well, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much, A, for continuing.
Thank you, Sunny.
Y'all doing the hard work, the real work. And thank you for taking care of the next generation. As Jay said earlier, if we don't take care of the next generation, the future is done. It's over. And so I'm so glad that people are out there pioneering for that. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for listening to the Sunny Side View. And I'll be sure to, if you have any questions, you can drop it, of course, when you listen to the episode, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you next time.
My name is Sunday Joy, and thank you for listening to my mom's podcast.